Welcome to Ladies in Law, where real-world advice meets professional wisdom and empowerment in realms of law and business. Your hosts, Lisa Goucher, Dawn Smith, and Kellye Raymond, bring you innovative strategies, practical guidance, and inspirational stories. Join us as we inspire and support women to thrive in traditionally male-dominated fields. We're here to promote inclusivity and provide practical advice for success. Hi, Lisa here with Kellye and Dawn. Today we are talking about leading with positivity. It's a topic that is just like, oh yeah, I know what it takes to be positive, but when you implement it into a work environment, or for instance, Kellye, she is talking to attorneys with the jury consultant business. Dawn, you're leading a team. I'm dealing with service providers like court reporters and videographers, and your end game is to get everyone on the same page in the best possible way and get the work done. So Dawn, what's going on at your office right now? How is positivity fueling everything you got going in light of what you said happened yesterday?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think I struggle with leading with positivity because it's like a talking point, right? I mean, it's something that we talk about all the time. It's important to lead with positivity, but it's a culture thing with whatever business you're working in, whatever group of people you're with. So I think that there's kind of sometimes there's a discrepancy in how to lead people. What's the best way to lead people? What's the best way to get the highest performance from your teammates? And I just think leading with positivity is the way to do it. And it's super hard.
It is hard. It's one of those things that sounds easier than it is, especially if you are sort of grumpy in nature, which sometimes I find myself just kind of grumpy for no reason. I think it's easy in this industry specifically to kind of get bogged down in negativity. And sometimes it is a really conscious, mindful effort to stay positive and kind of remind yourself, okay, some of these are first world problems and I need to be kind of trying to look on the brighter side. And if you do have a more naturally grumpy disposition, I think it's you've got to really be mindful about staying positive.
Are you grumpy?
I think sometimes I tend
Are you grumpy
towards
right
grumpy.
now?
I'm never grumpy here when we're filming. But I think it's sometimes, especially when if we're zeroing in on leading other people, I think that whether you are sort of grumpy by nature or not, or maybe you're just having a bad day, it's really important not to let that affect and infiltrate everybody else that you're working with, because negativity breeds more negativity, I think.
Well, and as a leader, you set the pace for everyone else. So what you're saying is so true, but it starts with the leader. And you have to find a way when you're feeling crabby to turn it around, because you will influence and impact everyone around you. So, just starting with yourself, a couple of things. We were talking about this collectively. When you're starting your day, starting with being really mindful, being grateful. I said it before, you cannot be hateful and grateful at the same time.
I love that, Lisa.
So if you are just rattling off those things that you're grateful for on your way to work, in the car, walking in, in the bathroom, it really does set in motion a more positive way to address the day and move forward. I mean, it's natural. Everybody's crabby now and again. But as a leader, you have to put that on the back shelf, or you have to distance yourself from the folks that you're working with, because they're watching you. And more often than not, they're going to do what you're doing.
I was just thinking, you've really got to identify if you are maybe coming from a more negative place or having a bad day. Try to identify, being, affirmative in thinking and gratitude is really important. And I think a part of that is identifying what is the source of negativity. Is it somebody else's actions that's impacting your work? Is it, something going on in your personal life that is breeding negativity? I think part of it is simply just identifying the negativity so you can sort of source, how do I get rid of it?
Really good point. Dawn, how do you do that?
So I'm struggling a little bit because I feel like, so I say being positive is super important, but am I living that every day? Like really kind of having that mindset going into the office and kind of dealing with things on a daily basis, because not everybody sees everything behind the scenes, right? So, and they don't need to see everything behind the scenes. You have to kind of separate yourself from that. And the way I do it is I really listen to podcasts. I mean, that was really kind of the impetus of this, because I am really inspired by a lot of podcasts. Like this morning, I was listening to Tara Brach, and she is a meditation extraordinaire, like just she has a mindful practice. She's very inspiring. And she was talking about leading with your heart instead of your head, and thinking with your heart instead of your head. And that's all about kind of what you said, Kellye, those negative thoughts that you have processing in your head. You have to kind of step back from those and realize that they're happening and they're not necessarily reality. What you believe in your head is not necessarily reality. And you just need to look at them as thoughts as opposed to just becoming all consumed with them. I mean, that's what I try to do.
I think that's a great point. The being mindful and meditating, and I know a lot of people just hear mindfulness and meditation and they kind of roll their eyes and they just think, oh, I'm not into that. It's a little too zen, hippie for me. It's not. It is really based on a ton of neuroscience. I started meditating during COVID. My mentor, Lisa Blue, is huge into meditation and the real science behind how it can help you focus. And so and it is a practice, just like anything else, just like a workout, just like, sitting down to write a brief. You have to practice it. It does not come easily, for me anyway, as I've got like 1,000 thoughts running through my brain. But I have found that it really helps me be grateful, even if it's 2 minutes a day to be quiet and to think about, okay, let me just focus on the present. Let me not worry about things that are coming up. Let me not worry about things that have already passed. And it really is just about being present. So that's a great way to kind of stay positive. The other really helpful way for me is to be working out. Right? Working out releases endorphins. Endorphins make you happy. Happy people just don't shoot their husbands.
Important safety tip: do not shoot your husband.
Shout out to Legally Blonde, right? I didn't make that up. But I think just starting the day, even if it's like with a 20-minute walk, right? It's not like you don't have to be some super hardcore CrossFitter, to just spend a little bit of time in your day just moving your body, I think, is one of those things that you can help you be slightly more positive, and it really takes nothing. We all have 20 minutes to just move around. Maybe it's stretching, maybe it's, like I said, going for a walk or for a run. Whatever your thing is, I think moving your body and literally releasing endorphins helps with the positivity.
Yeah, for sure. Lisa Blue did a presentation on mindfulness at like 7 a.m. 2 days into the conference. And there were quite a few people there. I mean, a lot of people showed up. She did a great talk on that. But I know mindfulness is kind of a buzzword right now, right? But it is helpful, just to kind of reset your thinking.
I'll tell you, when I started it in COVID, like I said, and it took months, and it was sometimes very, very frustrating. And then there was a moment where I downloaded an app, and I was just really being intentional about trying to kind of master being mindful and meditating. And there was a moment where about 10 seconds went by as I was meditating, and I didn't have a single thought in my head. And for people that have 1,000 thoughts in their head at all time, it was really kind of cool to see, like, okay, this is what it actually looks like to be present and to not be stressed or worried about anything. And so I could not be, I need to get back to it. Like everything else in life, it kind of ebbs and flows. And it's something that I kind of always strive to make sure is at the forefront of my to-do list on any particular day, because I do think it is so helpful.
I agree. The physical activity, I do it too. I work out, I walk, getting outside, breathing, breath work, grounding, kicking off the shoes, and listening to some meditation music, because I feel the same way. It's really hard to turn your thoughts off. So using the word mindful, you have to be really mindful. How are you going to get yourself to a place where you are in a Zen state or a peace state? Because I think that's the place where you can really kind of evaluate all the outside interference that could potentially be taken over. Like you said, Dawn, you have thoughts that are taken over and they become reality, but honestly, it's not reality. It's just taken on a life of its own in your own mind. So, speaking of COVID, that, none of us anticipated that. We talked about it, sent us home for 2 weeks. And then we thought we'd be back. And then it was a month, 2 months, 3 months. And then there we were.
2 years.
It was
Yes,
crazy.
2 years, like in a
I still
place.
can't believe that happened.
And, with the election and everything that went on, I mean, to me, it's like the elephant in the room. We have to see what is going on right now. If you're not clearing your mind, in my opinion, you are going to go down, you can get sucked down a rabbit hole that's not necessarily positive and isn't going to send you in a place where you can actually influence others in a positive manner. So this time around, like last time with it being so unknown and everything, as the election was approaching last summer, last fall, I was like, all right, I'm going to be focused. I'm going to get things done, and I'm going to figure out what information I actually want to bring in to my life and how I want to influence others. And a lot of it is just garbage in, garbage out. So keep that in mind. You want to make sure that what you're digesting, the people you're surrounding yourself by, that you feel they're lifting you up, inspiring you, educating you, informing you, everything in a positive manner.
Yeah, I think not getting bogged down in the bullshit is a really important thing to do when you're thinking about being positive. And we all have people in our lives that are sort of the negative person. Let's be honest, it is not fun to be around the negative person. And if you're sort of doing a quick calculation of people in your life that are kind of positive or negative, and you might be the negative one, right? And I think it's, especially in the context of leadership, nobody wants to be around somebody or follow somebody and listen to somebody and be persuaded by or learn from anybody that is just not pleasurable to be around.
It's not fun.
No.
It is not fun. And I will say too, I mean, we're talking big picture. We're talking big picture about how to start your day and everything. But, explosions happen in my life in the middle of a day. I don't know. I feel like
you can start the day going great, and
right.
then all of a sudden it turns
exactly. Yeah. And then what do? I mean, I think if you're thinking about the other person as opposed to thinking about yourself when you're in that environment, I think that's helpful. If you're thinking about adding value to the people around you, like how can I help, just having that thought inside that where you're not thinking about you're thinking about, okay, well, this is happening, but how can I help this other person through it? And that just really gets you out of that, I don't know, that drudgery, right? Is that a word? Drudgery?
It is now.
You're just kind of getting that bogged down. If you can take yourself out of your head and just try to lead by helping others around you, I think that's a good way to kind of do your crisis management when little explosions happen.
I think that's a great point. And sort of the flip side to that is not surrounding yourself with negative people, right? If you are really being mindful and kind of doing the things that you need to do to be positive and to stay positive, it can be very draining if you are constantly trying to lift up everybody else around you to be able to, you can't always control if you're around negative people, right? Maybe your client is negative. Maybe your coworkers are negative and there's only so much you can do. But I think in any instance where you can control the negativity coming in, try to. I'm so fortunate, for example, I've gotten to the point in my career where if there's a particular person that I just think is just too difficult to work with and is just negative, and all sort of the traits that go along with sort of a negative or toxic person, I say, sorry, I'm busy. I just try to really limit. I mean, like I said, we're not always in a position where we can turn down business or control the people that we are working around. But to the extent that you can, don't be afraid to do that. It is really better, I think, for you if you're able to get rid of negative people, then do that. If they're not serving you, it is very draining to consistently be trying to lift everybody else up.
I mean, what are there's got to be some techniques that we can use, right? Because most of the people that, I mean, they're not always negative, I mean, there are very few people that are always negative that you really have to segregate. I mean, most of the time, those people that are living in that moment are just going through a period of time that might be difficult, right? So having kind of that empathy, trying to put yourself in the position of that person. I'm not encouraging people to surround themselves with negative people, but I mean,
well, from your perspective, let me ask, because it's easy for me to say, well, if I don't want to work with somebody, then I just don't, right? You have a ton of lawyers that work under you at your firm. You can't always just, well, you're fired if you're negative or having a bad day. So how in your firm do you manage and kind of try to breed the positivity?
I think I need to be a lot better at it, honestly. I mean, I think in our culture of law, it's all about getting shit done, right? And I don't take enough time to pause and say, how can I make this better for that person? I think empathy really has a lot to do with it, as opposed to, you were supposed to have this done. Why isn't it done? We have to have deadlines. We have to have certain tasks that must be met in our industry. And in a lot of industries, there are deadlines that have to be met. So when you're trying to approach somebody and getting the best out of that person, I think you really just have to take a minute and figure out really what's going on with them and how can you help? How can I help is what I try to really play in my mind as much as possible, because I think that is the way through negativity.
I think that's so spot on. It's hard to just always be Susie Sunshine all the time. But if you're starting right, but if you're starting from, okay, let me try to be empathetic and try to see how I can help that person, then you don't really necessarily have to turn it on, right? Maybe you're annoyed somebody missed their deadline. You don't have to be positive about that. But I think being empathetic as to what can we do to help you make sure that doesn't happen again sounds like you're on the right track for sure.
Well, and most definitely, like trying to discern whether it's something you need to know and drill down into or not. Not everything in a working situation where somebody has made a mistake needs to be drilled down into to figure out why. So as a leader, you have to figure out which scenarios you should really take that extra effort. Like, is something you said like going on in their life? So in my industry, I've mentioned it before, there's a huge court reporting shortage. And when attorneys would complain regarding a court reporter in the past, I would just say, I would put in our database, don't use this court reporter for this attorney.
That's
okay.
Good.
Well,
that's pretty impressive.
Because then when they're going and they're scheduling, you just know to not set that person. Well, now, since there's so few, because the average age of a court reporter is 59 years old, and they are retiring quicker than they're bringing them in. Now, when I get a complaint from an attorney, and it's a reporter that I've been using time and time again for years, I go ask that attorney, what was the issue? Why? And so come to find out, it was a foreign witness. There was an interpreter, all of the things, like the real time wasn't as clean as he wanted it. Well, when you have certain circumstances, then it's just taking that opportunity to try to resolve it so that court reporter isn't just, blackballed regarding that specific counsel. So.
That kind of goes into not letting things fester.
True. Just
yes,
nip it in the
addressing
bud.
things head on is super important to positivity, to business, to probably everything in life. You could say if you address it head on, you're not giving it time and space and energy to just continue to fester. I hate that word.
Well, because they just share with each other.
It makes sense. That
gross.
Fester is like, I don't know. That's a real word for what we're dealing with when it comes to negativity.
Truly, because in a law firm, everybody's talking to everybody. And, they're not saying the reporters or the workflow that's perfect and going like it should. It's the negative. No. So, and that's fine because that means everything's going like it should go. But if something negative happens, they will share that with each other. The associates will share that. And then pretty soon it just turns into a big deal and we can't use that person. And it's just a challenging time, and trying to address it from a realistic, honest communication. Like if it comes down to something that I know we just shouldn't use that reporter for that attorney? Yes, most definitely. The client is number one, but if you can bridge that gap on what happened in that instance, it can really carry you a long way. And so I've really been trying to foster that communication.
What about just firing the lawyer?
And it feeds me.
Sometimes lawyers need to be fired.
That's true. I'm a big proponent of firing the people around you that are not getting it done. And especially, Dawn is a plaintiff's attorney. I work a ton with plaintiff's lawyers. Lisa is very closely involved in the plaintiff's lawyer world. And I think especially for those folks, it's so important to realize that secondary trauma is a real thing. And it's hard to always be positive when you are constantly dealing with clients that have been catastrophically injured. In any phase of law, nobody's hiring a lawyer because they're going through a good time in their life. You're always hiring a lawyer because something bad has usually happened, right? And so I think it's really important to compartmentalize. And there's only so much you can do about changing sort of the cases that you work on or the victims that you help. And so I think taking care of you first is the most important thing that you can do. You cannot help other people if you aren't taking care of yourself first.
So you missed, Lisa and I were talking, I brought somebody in to speak to our team about secondary trauma. I didn't really realize or appreciate how impactful that is, really listening to somebody and hearing some of the awful things that happen to their loved ones. I mean, it's just awful. And my daughter worked for me for a few weeks over the summer, and one of her good friends, they did internships, and Gwen came home one day and she was so upset because she had done an intake and that person that she was talking to was just so upset. So many terrible things had happened, and she was just really overwhelmed by those emotions. And I was like, we should have somebody come in and talk about secondary trauma and how that could be affecting our team. And I will say that did not go over as well as I was hoping it did, just because the environment that we're in, it's not a 9-to-5 job, and it's not really something that we can turn off. And I love the person that talked to everybody, but I think that the conversation needed to be more tailored to our environment where we don't turn off work, because she talked about
it? Just don't do that work.
Just leave at 5.
Just quit.
She was just like, you just have to cut everything off at 5 o'clock and don't work and don't answer emails and everything. Well, I didn't even hear it because I had to do something else. I was either traveling or something like that. And then the feedback that I've gotten, my partner was like, oh my goodness, that probably didn't come across exactly the way you wanted it. So,
listen, I think there are certainly some people that don't handle a secondary trauma response as well as other people. And if you are one of those folks, then you shouldn't be representing catastrophically injured people, right? Or maybe you should find another path. But for most of us, it's important to find how can we compartmentalize this and remain empathetic and driven and passionate about the work that we're doing, while also not taking it home with us. I think it's
impossible though.
I don't know.
You say this compartmentalizing. Is there compartmentalizing?
Yeah, I'm a very good compartmentalizer. I can take whatever is going on in the work situation, as stressful as it might be, and then compartmentalize it and then go do whatever I need for the kids or whatever, like some crisis going on over there, and then I can move it over here. Like, one is not necessarily affecting the other.
It definitely is difficult, right? I'm not trying to suggest that. It's just easy. Just create all these little compartments in your brain and in your heart and don't let them bleed over. But I think, finding something outside of your work is helpful to do that, right? So if I'm horseback riding, maybe I've had a really stressful week and I'm really, really feeling sad about a particular case. I can't feel sad about that while I'm trying to ride a 1,200-pound animal, right? And so putting yourself in situations that allow you to escape, I think, helps with it. Your brain can only do so much, right? You can't worry about your clients if you are also, trying to run 5 miles, and you've got to worry about just putting whatever your thing is. I think it's so important to find an outlet.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the whole thing is, like, how do we, it's not like these things don't happen all the time, like terrible things happen all the time, but how do we deal with them and how do we lead through those? How do we give the people around us the tools to be able to deal with those, because I've been doing this a long time. You have too, because you started younger than me, and so have you. We've had an opportunity to kind of train ourselves to just put it to the side. And I don't know, I think we just need to take a minute and realize that not everybody has been doing it as long as we have. And it's just going to take a beat, right? Just going to take a minute more to get that person to be able to use those tools to make it through.
Well, and in the environment, the work environment you're talking about, like you have to have open communication, or at least an opportunity for open communication, so that you've got that feedback. And, you don't want an office setting wherein no one is saying anything because they're afraid to talk. So you want open communication. You need recognition. Like, you're really great at telling people when they are doing a really great job. And that's really important because a lot of people are fueled by recognition. They just want to know that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and providing constructive feedback. So Kellye, really quick, the attorneys, the constructive feedback, like how do you tell somebody that they're sucking when they're picking a jury?
Well, that's the great, that's kind of the great thing about being a jury consultant. It is truly my job to criticize and to say, you're not doing that the best way you could be doing. There's a better way to do it, right? I don't get anything out of just being a yes woman and just telling and just being positive for no reason, right? If a lawyer needs to get better, or if a particular aspects of a case need to get better, it's kind of great. It's a great built-in outlet to what I do, is that I get to be honest and just say, listen, and there's a way to say it, right? You don't have to be an asshole about it. But I think if you are just communicating clearly, and this is X, Y, and Z, the things that aren't working, and we need to change those, that's kind of why I'm being brought in a lot of instances, is to try to help improve the strategy, the lawyer's presence, all the different things that kind of go into being a trial lawyer and standing up and trying to persuade people. I'm lucky that I don't have to sugarcoat things. That's not what I get paid to do.
You've got to do it in a way, though, that people hire you back.
Yeah, like I said, you don't want to be an asshole. But
I think that's a real skill. That's a real talent, to be able to communicate to somebody that is, kind of egotistical in many ways, and like tell them in a constructive way, these are the things we need to improve. Those are such important skills that I'm still learning on.
Yeah, I think it's communication, right? Lisa said it. Communication really is the key. First with yourself, and identifying if you're not feeling particularly positive, what are the things that are bringing negatives into your life? What are the things that you can do to sort of adjust your outlook? Whether it be physical, mental changes, little shifts that you can make. And then ultimately communicating with the people around you, and telling people, if you're a young associate at a firm, going to your partner and saying, look, I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z. I need help with that. What can we do? I think that should really be encouraged.
Wow, Kellye, you wrapped that all up perfectly, like all the points leading with positivity. So that's it for today, and we would love your feedback. You can email us at hello@ladiesinlaw.com. That's ladies, the letter N, law.com.
Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Ladies in Law. We hope you're walking away inspired and ready to shake things up in law and business. Don't forget to hit subscribe and let us know what you think. Spread the word and share this podcast with your network. Follow us on socials for all the behind-the-scenes fun and sneak peeks of upcoming episodes. Until next time, keep rocking it, keep breaking the mold, and as always, keep aspiring to inspire.